Let's take a look at a rather spectacular new Iron Warrior Warsmith. Games Workshop seem to be baking the Emperor's Children into their Advent teasers. A possible rules oversight gives Imperial Knights access to some rather funky Admech goodness, and plenty more besides. Time for a roundup of 40k news. Hello and welcome back to Warsmith Tactics, where today I thought it would be fun to do a roundup of a whole bunch of Warhammer 40k news things that have been happening over the course of the week. Just a few other small topics that I thought were interesting enough to talk about, with potential teasers of more Emperor's Children goodness coming this month, a new roster on Warhammer Plus shows that seem to have been redesigned, a few reimaginations for Titus, and a bit more besides. Starting off though, let's talk about this Iron Warriors Warsmith. A new Heresy era sculpt done rather well, and has had a pretty massively good reception wherever I've seen it posted. It seems that people are really big fans of this guy. It seems that Games Workshop are doing another run of Horus Heresy reveals on the Heresy Thursdays. There's been quite a few of them that they've dedicated to Legions Imperialis, but at least for a few of them it looks like they're focusing on big scale heresy. We had the Space Wolf Totally Not a Psyker last week. This week there's a pair of different Iron Warrior Warsmiths, basically the same model but in a different pose. And next week they say they're keeping the reveals coming with something new. He is going to be a 4-12 resin character, as is the norm for the majority of their character series, and I must admit I think the model looks really quite good. He's in Cataphracta Terminator armour, and holding just a ridiculously enormous sledgehammer called a Graviton Crusher, with which to smash down the enemies of Perturabo. As well as that, he's got a combi grav with his sidearm, so all the Graviton goodness there, plus a servo arm to do some battlefield repairs to vehicles and things if needed, as is his role as a Warsmith. Overall, I think it's just a really great miniature design, and they've painted it well as well. Nice to see the hazard stripes there. I think there's a lot of stuff with the fun industrial sort of theme of a bunch of the armour plates, but also being a bit more fine and ornate compared with the rank and file. And he does have an option to field him unhelmeted as well, as you can see here. In any case, nice to see some love for the Iron Warriors, who really haven't had too much model support. Certainly feels like a miniature that you could make use of for Warhammer 40k, run them as a Chaos Lord or something, in absence of Games Workshop giving them any specific rules. Bear in mind it is going to be 4-12 resin when it comes out though, so it's probably going to be around about 1.5 times the price of Games Workshop's normal character designs. Interestingly enough for this guy, they decided not to release him once but twice. He's got an alternative pose, which is going to be location locked, so this one's only going to be available at Warhammer World. It's basically the same miniature but in different styling. Rather than standing static, he's sort of striding forward a little bit, and instead he's carrying that great big Grav Crusher in 2 hands with the combi weapon stowed on his belt. To be honest, I think both of them look really nice in their own ways. Might be a bit annoying for anyone who prefers this one though, that it's going to be only available to get in Nottingham, as that's not exactly going to be convenient for most people. Let me know what you think of the model though, I think they've done rather well. Before we move on to Emperor's Children teasers and interesting nightly rules, I'll just give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor in Baron of Dice. They're the ones that made some merch dice for the channel not so long ago and asked to sponsor a few videos, basically aiming towards the higher end of the dice market in the USA with an absolutely enormous range of dice, aiming to have things that could be applicable to just about any faction out there, and there are quite a lot of ones that could fit with a bunch of 40k offerings. Their typical price is $32.50 or £28 for 25 dice, fairly comparable with Games Workshop's offerings for the fancier ones that they have. They're based in the USA, so they are going to be a bit cheaper there compared with shipping overseas. They've got a Christmas clearance sale on at the moment, where a bunch of pretty nice dice but maybe less broad appeal ones are going off the range. There's quite big discounts on their sort of naughty list section of the store, with 25% off a whole bunch of things. Might be of interest to take a look through. Otherwise though, they've got loads of other designs out there for most armies, plus also the Auspex Tactics ones as well. They certainly did very well with the channel logo on these. In any case, there'll be links down in the video description, and thanks to them for sponsoring this one. Next up, one interesting thing that was pointed out to me was that the Admech detachment special rule has a little bit more scope than I thought it did, and I suspect that this is probably a rules oversight, but it looks like as well as being able to essentially assume direct control of an Admech unit, it looks like the Tech Priest doing the new spheric transference is also able to empower a massive great big Freeblade Imperial Knight. The way the recent Grotmas detachment works for the Admech is that you select units to get a Halo Override buff, and most rules like that are keyworded so they can only be used on the faction units, so not things like allies, but it doesn't look like there's any such restriction on that Halo Screed Battleclade detachment. Basically it looks like if you take them along and then also bring along some allies, it could be knights or it could be Imperial agents or anything, then if you select one of those units for the detachment buff, then they can get some interesting extra abilities. It's likely going to be most efficient on Imperial Knights. given that they're enormous, great big scary units, so the buff is going to have more impact, and you can have things like knights advancing and charging, gaining a +2 inch to the move, gaining stealth or gaining +1 toughness. They wouldn't be able to use these stratagems for the detachment though, given that they're locked to Admech. I feel like it's an interesting little rules quirk and it is kind of fun, though one of my guess is that it probably wasn't designed that they'd be able to do this. It's also realistically not really that overpowered. Knights lose really quite a lot of power when they're used as allies rather than in their own detachment. They don't get the 6+ feel no pain, they don't get the free reroll a hit and wound, and they don't get stratagems like rotate ion shields. So at least to my mind, gaining advance and charge or stealth in place of one of your other units, gaining those isn't exactly the most game-breaking thing in the world, even if it might be strong enough to make it interesting. It does seem a bit weird and oddly unintended. I really wouldn't be too surprised if it gets patched, but to be honest I think it's kind of fun to have a reason to field an allied knight alongside Admech, maybe in a weird way harking back to their Knights of the Cog type days, unless this attachment does wind up being problematically strong. It feels like it'd be kind of fine just for them to let this one go. Let me know what you think on that one though. Next up, and as just one little small aside, I thought it was interesting that Games Workshop's Advent Teasers are trying to tell us something. They've basically been running this Red Gobbo competition where the idea is that you respond to the contest each week with a picture of whatever the Red Gobbo's holding up in a sign each week, and it gives you a chance to win like a combat patrol and a Joy Toy figure and things, plus one big VIP trip to Warhammer World. I'm sure some people have been doing it, though I'd guess there's really quite a lot of entrants. I think there's 2 weeks of that left at time of recording for people who are trying to enter to that one. One of the interesting things though is that it seems that they've got an Emperor's Children theme going on with the little signs that he's holding up. So far we've had a snake, a purple paint pot, a loudspeaker and a chaos icon. Put those all together and you most certainly get Emperor's Children, lots of nice noise marines, and the snake being a good one for Fulgrim I guess. I guess it's not exactly teasing that the Emperor's Children are going to be a thing, as we already know they're going to be a thing, but interesting to see that the Emperor's Children stuff is getting directly paired with their Christmas promotions. There could be one hint that the Christmas Day reveal could be Emperor's Children themes, as that should be the next big Warhammer 40k reveal that we're expecting at this stage. It would be pretty awesome if we get to see a few new Noise Marines or even Fulgrim himself. They're going to be along at some point, it's just a matter of when, not if. Next up, it looks like they're doing quite a big shake-up for the Warhammer Plus non-animation streaming shows. Basically the content drops that they have coming each week, generally coming out on a Wednesday, occasionally alongside one of their big effort animations, so the animations feel maybe a bit more like an infrequent occurrence, as opposed to something to look out for on any one day or week. Generally instead of that, for their streaming content, they've tended to have things like their Battle Report show, Painting Masterclasses and Lore Masters, though it seems they've decided that they wanted to shake up the formula of that in really quite a big way, and seem to be experimenting with a massive amount of formats, maybe doing a bit of experimentation to see what's popular. It seems they're deciding to more formally organise their streaming content than they had been doing before, doing it in 13-week seasons, and within those 13 weeks it kind of looks like they'd have 3 months where they have 3 different instalments of each one of their shows, given that they've got so many different types of them now. Apparently they're going to have one called Deep Strike, which is chatting about animations and video games, How We Roll, which is a design studio interviews one, probably talking about how they're designing specialist games and things, a Painting Desk one, which is interviews with pro painters, Arena of Death, where you basically smash 2 models against each other and see who wins in little mini games. Questing Knights is one for co-op games, which I guess you could do with things like Kill Team or Necromunda perhaps. Scribes and Scriveners are Black Library discussions, Scrap Demon is converting things, Mechboy Workshop is assembling and painting in some way, and then there's going to be once per season things including a Black Library quiz and some sort of open play challenge show. It feels like a slightly weirdly overabundance of formats, perhaps odd to have like 13 different offerings and only have them turn up once a month. It does make me think that if you're a fan of any one of these shows, you're not really going to get all that much content from it. I still say it probably does sound a bit more interesting compared with their current offering though. I don't feel like anyone really sees it as a main selling point of Warhammer Plus. The criticism with these style shows are just they're the sort of thing that you often see done on YouTube channels that you can watch for free. Games Workshop themselves do put out a fair bit of content on their Warhammer YouTube channel, quite a lot of painting tutorials and things, and if you're a fan of any one gaming system, I feel like they have to dilute their offerings quite a bit by not featuring them all that regularly on this, so if you're a fan of Warhammer 40k it's not going to turn up every battle report for example. It seems their announcement video for this didn't really go down too well in terms of likes versus dislikes, and a fair few of the comments were people requesting various different animations including Astartes too. It does seem they're not able to keep those sort of things coming every week as they're quite big projects in their own right for each one, but certainly feels like the things that steal the limelight from these kind of shows In any case, I think for the people subscribed to Warhammer Plus, I don't think many people would cite these shows as a main selling point. Next up, I thought I'd cycle back to Lieutenant Titus, who's got his model released this week, as well as the datasheet, which I covered in its own video earlier. There's a trio of other small things that I wanted to talk about for him. In-game, as mentioned, he costs 70 points, gives his unit sustained hits, and has a personal fights on death, though it's maybe a bit disappointing in terms of damage. His chainsword is anti-infantry 2+, but still only strength 4, AP 1 and damage 1, and it does mean that he's not really going to be all that great against anything besides light infantry. Firstly, there was a little bit of confusion as to whether or not he was Legends due to the file name of the PDF download that he had. Basically, there was nothing on his datasheet or his placement within the Warhammer rules section to imply that he was a Legends datasheet and not meant for competitive games, but it said Legends in the document name, which made a few people unsure, or maybe wondering whether or not he was originally intended to be Legends, but GW did a bit of an about face and decided to give him a more official 40k welcome, given that he's pretty much the best known Space Marine out there right now. In any case, it seems that since Tuesday when I made that video, they've actually changed the file name. It now reads Other Rules, so there's no mention of Legends there either. Seems they wanted to avoid that confusion. Otherwise, for when he goes on sale, it looks like he's a direct-only miniature to purchase, so either ordering via the web store or picking him up in a Warhammer store, so not going to be to discount retailers initially. It seems that Games Workshop are really trying to capitalise on bringing in players from Space Marine 2. The idea is that if you go into an official Warhammer store and buy him, then you get given a £10 voucher to spend on other Warhammer stuff. Though it looks like they're being a bit crafty and only handing out that £10 voucher after Christmas. You'll get the voucher, but you can only redeem it on the 26th of December or later and before the start of February. I guess the idea is that you go and get the model, and then there's at least a fairly good incentive to come back and buy something else. Maybe Games Workshop trying to induct a whole bunch of people interested in the video games into the miniature building side of the hobby. It still seems that if you're in the USA though, it's better to buy the Target Space Marine box set if you can find one. Otherwise for Titus as well as the 40k rules that I covered earlier in the week, he's also got some fun kill team rules, some scenarios to play with him, and what I found quite fun as well is that they made some special datasheet rules for Brother Sergeant Gadriel and Brother Chiron. Sadly without their own bespoke models, though I think that would have been very cool. But either way, very fun and fluffy that you can go purging some Tyrannid Space Marine style, and can do so with the solo or cooperative style play one with the MPOs and everything. While we're on the subject of Warhammer store things as well, looks like the free miniature of the month from 7th of December is a Skaven Storm Vermin. If you're passing by on the Saturday, it could be worth picking one up. If it is convenient for you, though I probably wouldn't go out my way to travel for it. In theory, they should be completely free without strings attached. It looks like the next collectible coin for purchases as well is an Underworlds one. Next up, while Warhammer 40k is getting its Grotsmas advent calendar, I was kind of interested to see what Age of Sigmar will be getting, as they did say there'd be some sort of content drop for it. It seems that rather than going for a detachment or rule set every single day though, they've decided to go for just one document of Armies of Renown, writing 8 different ones of them, basically allowing you to add some small allied formations into various different other forces. Looks like it's no daily or weekly content for Age of Sigmar, it's just this drop. I'm certainly not clued up as to Age of Sigmar rules and how impactful they are, but it does seem like they've invested a little bit of time in it, but nowhere near quite as much as the vast amount of 40k detachments. Otherwise though, for 40k things on the horizon, the main thing that's going to be happening for December is the big 18 days of Grotmas. Looks like I'll be kept very busy with new detachments coming out literally every day, and then there'll certainly be something for Christmas Day. It looked like there was something at the end of the Grotmas calendar. Usually they do miniature reveals, and as mentioned, feels like Emperor's Children could be a possibility, though potentially more Krieg or Eldari of some sort could be an option as well. They didn't really seem to imply that there were any more coming at the last preview that they did, but I guess it's not impossible either, and they'd be the next codexes out. I think my guess is Emperor's Children though, based on the hype and miniature reveal teasers that we've had recently, plus also those red Gobbo teasers. Otherwise, at some point, the balanced data slate is coming out. I really hope that this is just in some random day during December, as opposed to, say, Christmas Day, for example. I could see a tiny bit of logic for that, given that they're going to do a whole bunch of detachments, and then he could round it off with the balanced data slate at the end as a big rules drop. I'm not really too sure I'd be the biggest fan of that, though. Just seems like it'd be a bit too much content to drop, to the point where it might be a bit more annoying than just, say, a quick model reveal that you can take a look at. Otherwise, they usually do some miniature silhouette teasers around New Year time. We had things like Orc Big Mechs and the Custodian Shield Captain last time around, plus some Crews, and they will be getting into the first Codex release of 2025 proper, the Astra Militarum and the Krieg box launch, the Eldari and their Aspect Warriors, and Imperial Knights and probably Chaos Knights after that. We know there's Emperor's Children and also Grey Knights confirmed, unlikely the majority of the rest of the codexes that haven't had a release yet too. In any case, looks like it should be a fairly busy time. These detachments and the balanced data slate coming out seems like they're going to be quite a lot to be going on with. In any case, let me know your thoughts as to all the news, teasers and reveals. What do you make of the Iron Warrior, new Titus things, Emperor's Children teasers, and Knights with their Halo overrides? Look forward to hearing all your thoughts down in the comments. Feel free to check out the Baron of Dice as well, the video sponsor. There'll be links down in the video description if you want to take a look at a bunch of fun dice designs that have different ones for basically every faction in 40k, and a fair bunch of designs that are on clearance sale. In any case though, feel free to subscribe to Warsmith Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'm sure I'll be back to talk some more 40k detachments in the near future. And if you'd like to support the channel, there's the Patreon page and all the affiliate discount links in the video description. Feel free to check those out if you'd like to. In any case though, an enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.